The rain poured heavily over the newly constructed Earth Galactic Embassy, its crystal and steel architecture gleaming under the stormy night sky. James Miller stood at his office window, watching the droplets race down the transparent surface. As Earth's junior diplomatic officer, he often worked late, but tonight felt different. The building was nearly empty, with most staff having left hours ago. The soft hum of the environmental systems and the occasional rumble of thunder were his only companions. That was until the security system chimed, alerting him to movement in the embassy's garden. Through the rain-streaked window, he spotted a tall, slender figure. Their skin had a subtle blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the garden's lighting. The alien wore the formal robes of the Stellar Collective, the most advanced civilization humanity had encountered since achieving faster-than-light travel. What caught James's attention wasn't the alien's presence. The embassy regularly hosted representatives from various species. It was their behavior. The figure stood in the rain, head tilted back, making no effort to seek shelter. Even from this distance, James could tell something was wrong. Following diplomatic protocol, he grabbed an umbrella and headed to the garden. As he approached, he realized the alien was female, based on the distinctive markings on her neck that denoted gender in their species. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, and James froze. She was crying. In his 3 years of diplomatic service, James had never seen a member of the Stellar Collective display such raw emotion. Their species prided themselves on emotional control, viewing it as the hallmark of civilization. Yet here she was, tears mixing with raindrops on her face. "Are you all right?" James asked, holding the umbrella over both of them. "I'm James Miller, Earth Diplomatic Corps." The alien's eyes, large and silver-flecked, fixed on his face. "I am Lyra," she said, her universal translator giving her words a musical quality. "Fourth envoy of the Stellar Collective." Her voice trembled. "And no, I am not all right. Nothing is all right." James noticed she was shaking, though whether from cold or emotion, he couldn't tell. "Please, come inside. We can talk in my office." Lyra nodded, following him through the garden. Water dripped from her robes as they walked through the empty corridors. James' office wasn't large, but it was comfortable, with a small sitting area designed to accommodate various alien physiologies. As soon as the door closed behind them, Lyra spoke again. "You must think this highly inappropriate. My people." She paused, wiping her face. "We do not show emotion this way. It is considered primitive, dangerous even." "Sometimes emotions need to be expressed," James said gently, offering her a sterilized absorption cloth designed for various alien physiologies. "Would you like to tell me what's wrong?" Lyra's hands clutched the cloth tightly. "We have been watching Earth for centuries, Mr. Miller. Long before you achieved spaceflight, we thought we understood humans. We were wrong. So terribly wrong." James remained silent, letting her continue. "Your species." She looked at him with an intensity that made him step back. "You feel everything so deeply, yet you function. You experience joy, grief, anger, love, sometimes all at once, and still make rational decisions. Do you know how extraordinary that is?" "I've never thought about it," James admitted. "No species we've encountered can do this. We either suppress emotions for logic, like my people, or are ruled entirely by them, like the primal worlds. But humans." She stepped closer, her silver-flecked eyes wide. "Humans are different, and that difference might be the only thing that saves us all." Before James could respond, Lyra grabbed his hands. Her skin was cool and slightly textured, like fine silk. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything you know about the galaxy, about your place in it." Her grip tightened. "And I'm breaking every law my people have by telling you this." Thunder crashed outside, and the office lights flickered momentarily. In that brief darkness, James saw fear in Lyra's eyes. Not for herself, but for something much bigger. "Tell me," he said quietly. Her next words would indeed change everything. Lyra took a deep breath, her blue-tinted skin catching the dim light of James's office. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the embassy windows, providing a dramatic backdrop to her revelation. "Your world is in danger," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But not in the way you might think. We've been watching Earth since your medieval period, documenting every major event, every war, every triumph, every disaster. At first, we thought humans were just another violent species that would eventually destroy themselves." James sat quietly, noting how her hands trembled as she spoke. "But then we saw something remarkable. After each catastrophe, humans didn't just survive. They grew stronger. When faced with tragedy, you created art. When confronted with loss, you built monuments. When experiencing joy, you made music that could move even our emotionally controlled species to feel something." Thunder rolled outside as Lyra paced the office, her formal robes swishing softly against the floor. 300 years ago, we discovered a terrible truth about our galaxy. There are beings out there, ancient, hungry beings, that feed on emotional energy. We call them the Void Hunters. James leaned forward. "Feed on emotional energy. How is that possible?" "Emotions create patterns in the quantum field," Lyra explained, using her hands to illustrate. "These patterns contain energy. Most species either suppress their emotions like we do, making them poor food sources, or they're so overwhelmed by their feelings that they're easily consumed entirely. But humans—" She stopped pacing and looked directly at James. "Humans are different." Rain pelted against the windows as she continued. "Your species feels deeply but maintains control. You experience emotions fully while staying functional. This creates powerful, stable emotional energy patterns that could potentially repel the Void Hunters. We've never seen anything like it." "Why are you telling me this now?" James asked, his diplomatic training helping him maintain composure despite the shocking information. Lyra's silver-flecked eyes filled with tears again. "Because they're coming. Our long-range sensors detected them 3 Earth months ago. They've never approached a protected sector before, but something is drawing them here. We think—" She hesitated. "We think they can sense humanity's potential." James stood up, walking to his terminal. "We need to alert Earth's defense forces, the Planetary Council." "No." Lyra grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. Conventional weapons are useless against them. They exist partially in another dimension. The only thing that can hurt them is the energy created by strong emotions, especially emotions shared between species." "Shared between species." James turned to face her. "Is that even possible?" Lyra's expression softened. "It wasn't supposed to be. Our scientists said it was theoretically impossible for different species to form deep emotional connections. But then we started studying human relationships with their Earth animals. Pets, you call them. You form genuine emotional bonds with creatures completely different from you. No other species does that." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystalline device. It projected a hologram showing various human-animal interactions: a person crying while hugging their dog, a cat comforting their sick owner, a horse and rider moving in perfect synchronization. "These bonds create unique energy patterns," Lyra explained. "We believe that if humans could form similar connections with other sentient species, it could create a defense network powerful enough to drive back the Void Hunters." James sat back down, his mind racing with the implications. "That's why you're here, breaking your laws by telling me this. You're trying to form that kind of connection." "Yes," Lyra whispered, deactivating the hologram. "And it's already working. The fact that I can even cry in your presence, that I can feel this strongly, it shouldn't be possible. My species hasn't cried in 10,000 years." The storm outside began to fade, but the tension in the office remained thick. James stood up, his diplomatic training warring with the enormity of what he just learned. "How long do we have?" he asked. Lyra's answer was immediate and chilling. 2 weeks. After that, Earth will be their first target. James poured himself a cup of coffee, his third since Lyra's revelation. The embassy's night lighting had switched to its lowest setting, casting long shadows across his office. Lyra sat across from him, her posture more relaxed now that the initial emotional barrier had broken. "Tell me more about these emotional bonds," James said, pushing aside his growing anxiety about the approaching threat. "How exactly do they work?" Lyra's fingers traced patterns on the surface of his desk. "Among my people, emotions are seen as primitive impulses that need to be controlled. We developed technologies to suppress them, believing this would lead to perfect logical thinking. But we were wrong." She stood up and walked to the window, where the last drops of rain were falling. "Humans are unique because you understand something we forgot. Emotions and logic aren't enemies. They're partners. Your species can feel profound grief while still planning for the future. You can experience intense joy while remaining aware of your responsibilities. You can love deeply while maintaining rational thought. But surely other species can do that too?" James asked. Lyra shook her head. "No. We've studied thousands of civilizations. They all fall into two categories. Those who suppress emotions like us, becoming cold and distant, or those who let emotions rule them entirely, leading to chaos. Humans are the only ones who found balance." She turned back to face him, her silver-flecked eyes reflecting the dim light. "Watch this." She pulled out her crystalline device again, but this time it displayed different images, brain scans of various species. "This is a stellar collective brain." She pointed to one image showing mostly blue colors. "See how regulated and controlled it is. And this," she pointed to a chaotic red pattern, "is a species from the primal worlds, ruled entirely by emotion. But this," she pointed to a human brain scan, showing a beautiful interplay of colors. "This is your species. Look at how the emotional and logical centers work together." James studied the images, fascination overriding his exhaustion. "And you think this balance is what makes us capable of forming these special bonds?" "We know it is," Lyra said firmly. "Your ability to maintain emotional connections while thinking clearly creates a unique energy signature. When you form bonds with other species, you actually help them achieve a similar balance. It's like you're teaching them how to feel without losing themselves." She closed the device and placed it carefully on the desk. "But there's more. These bonds don't just create defensive energy. They change both species involved. Already, I'm experiencing emotions I never thought possible, yet I can still think clearly. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time." James watched as she struggled with these new feelings, her hands clasping and unclasping. "Is this why you chose to tell me specifically?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly. "Our scientists analyze the emotional compatibility of every human in the diplomatic corps. You scored the highest for potential bonding. Your emotional resilience combined with your diplomatic training makes you ideal for this process." She moved closer to his desk, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But there's something we didn't expect. The bond. It's forming faster than our calculations predicted. We thought it would take weeks of careful interaction. Instead," she gestured between them, "it's happening naturally, rapidly." "Is that dangerous?" James asked, suddenly concerned. "Not dangerous," Lyra replied, "but unprecedented. The energy patterns we're creating together are stronger than anything we've measured before. And if we can replicate this with other humans and other species." She left the sentence unfinished as a soft alarm chimed from her device. Picking it up, she studied the display, her expression growing serious. "What is it?" James asked, standing up. "The Void Hunters," she said, her voice tight with newly experienced fear. "They've changed course. They're moving faster than we predicted. We don't have 2 weeks anymore." "How long?" Lyra's eyes met his, and he could see both terror and determination in them. 5 days. We have 5 days to create enough bonds to protect Earth. After that." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. The fate of Earth, and possibly the galaxy, now rested on their ability to teach others what they were experiencing. the delicate balance of emotion and reason that humans had mastered without even realizing it. Morning light crept into the embassy as James and Lyra briefed a small group of carefully selected diplomats. The room buzzed with nervous energy as holographic displays showed the Void Hunters' approach through space. "They move like a dark cloud," Lyra explained, pointing to the swirling mass on the screen. "Their ships, if you can call them that, absorb light itself. But what makes them truly terrifying is their hunger." The assembled group watched as she played a recording from a previously attacked world. The footage showed a peaceful city suddenly engulfed in shadow. As the darkness passed, the people left behind were empty shells, physically alive but emotionally vacant. "They don't kill," James added, his voice tight. "They strip away everything that makes a being feel alive. The victims survive, but without any capacity for emotion. They become less than robots. At least robots can be programmed to simulate feelings." An older diplomat raised his hand. "How do we fight something like this?" "Our weapons would pass right through them," Lyra finished. "They exist partially in another dimension. Physical weapons are useless, but emotional energy, specifically the kind humans generate, can hurt them." James stepped forward, drawing everyone's attention. "We've discovered that humans have a unique ability. When we form emotional bonds with other species, it creates a kind of energy shield. Lyra and I have already established such a connection." To demonstrate, Lyra activated another device. A shimmering field became visible between her and James, a soft, multicolored light that pulsed with their shared emotional energy. "Beautiful," someone whispered. "Yes," Lyra agreed. "But more importantly, it's deadly to the Void Hunters. They can't feed on this type of energy. It burns them. With enough bonds like this across the planet, we could create a defensive network they couldn't penetrate." The room erupted in questions, but a sudden alarm cut through the chaos. Lyra's device was flashing red. Her hands shook as she read the display. "They've accelerated again," she announced, her voice trembling. "The Void Hunters have entered the solar system. They're past Pluto." The room fell silent. James felt his heart pounding but kept his voice steady. "How long now?" 3 days, Lyra replied. "Maybe less. They're moving faster than anything we've ever seen them do. It's like they're desperate to reach Earth." One of the diplomats, a woman named Anna, spoke up. "Why are they so focused on us? If human emotions are dangerous to them, wouldn't they avoid Earth?" Lyra and James exchanged glances. It was a question they'd discussed during their sleepless night. "We think," James said carefully, "that they see Earth as both a threat and an opportunity. If they can consume humanity's emotional energy before we learn to use it properly, they'll remove the only real threat to their existence. And grow stronger than ever," Lyra added. "The very thing that makes humans dangerous to them also makes you the most valuable food source they've ever encountered. If they succeed." She didn't need to finish the thought. The room's atmosphere grew heavy with understanding. Humanity's greatest strength, its emotional depth, had made Earth the most important battlefield in the galaxy. "We need to start forming bonds immediately," James announced. "Each of you will be paired with a member of the Stellar Collective. You'll work together to establish emotional connections. Time is critical." "But how?" Anna asked. "How do we form these bonds?" Lyra stepped forward, her silver-flecked eyes intense. "You must be willing to be vulnerable, to share your feelings openly. My people will struggle with this. We've spent millennia suppressing our emotions. You'll need to guide us, teach us how to feel safely." James watched as the diplomats absorbed this information. He could see the mix of fear and determination on their faces, exactly the kind of complex emotional balance that made humans unique. "The Void Hunters think they're coming to consume Earth," he said firmly. "Instead, they're going to find something they've never encountered before. A species that isn't afraid to feel, to connect, to love, and to fight back with those very emotions they hope to steal." Outside the embassy windows, the sun continued to rise, unaware that in just 3 days, its light might be swallowed by a darkness that hungered for more than just energy. It hungered for humanity's very soul. The embassy had transformed into a center of frenzied activity. In every room, humans and aliens worked to forge emotional bonds, following James and Lyra's example. But success was limited. Most of the stellar collective members struggled to break through centuries of emotional suppression. "It's not working fast enough," Lyra said, watching another failed attempt through the observation window. Inside, a frustrated diplomat was trying to connect with a stoic alien. "We've only established 8 viable bonds in 24 hours. At this rate." James stood beside her, close enough to feel the now familiar hum of their own emotional connection. "What made our bond different? Why did it form so quickly?" Lyra turned to face him, her blue-tinted skin glowing under the embassy's lights. "I've been analyzing that. When I first approached you, I was already breaking down emotionally. The knowledge of what was coming, the weight of betraying my people's laws, it cracked my emotional control before we even met." "A crack in the armor," James mused. "But we can't ask your people to break down crying in the rain. We need another way." As if in answer to his words, a commotion erupted down the hall. They rushed to find Anna, one of the human diplomats, laughing with her alien partner. The air between them shimmered with the distinctive glow of a newly formed bond. "How did you do it?" James asked, amazed. Anna grinned. "I showed him cat videos." "Cat videos?" Lyra's universal translator seemed to struggle with the concept. "Yes," Anna's alien partner spoke up, his voice carrying an unusual warmth for one of his species. "These small Earth creatures, they triggered something in me. Their pure emotional displays, the way humans love them despite their apparent illogical behavior. It helped me understand what I've been missing." James and Lyra exchanged excited glances. They quickly gathered everyone in the main conference room, where Anna's discovery led to a new approach. "We've been trying to force emotional connections," James addressed the group. "Instead, we need to show our partners what makes us human. Share pictures of your families. Tell stories about your pets. Play music that moves you." The next hours brought breakthrough after breakthrough. Humans shared their most heartfelt memories and experiences. They showed videos of children's first steps, played recordings of wedding vows, shared stories of loss and triumph. The stellar collective members, exposed to these pure expressions of human emotion, began to change. One alien wept while watching a soldier's homecoming. Another laughed for the first time while seeing a puppy play in snow. Each crack in their emotional control led to stronger bonds. But as their successes mounted, Lyra received more alarming news. She pulled James aside, her face tight with worry. "The Void Hunters have passed Mars," she whispered. "They'll reach Earth in 36 hours. We've established 43 bonds now, but our calculations show we need at least 200 to create an effective planetary shield." James ran his hands through his hair, exhausted but determined. "Then we need to think bigger. These one-on-one bonds are working, but too slowly." He paused, an idea forming. "What if we could reach more of your people at once? Show them something so emotionally powerful that it breaks through their control on a massive scale." Lyra's eyes widened. "A mass emotional event. It's never been done. The risk is worth taking," James finished. "We've proven that your people can handle emotions without losing themselves. Now we just need to scale it up." He walked to the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "Gather everyone. I have an idea, but it's going to take everything we've got." Lyra joined him at the window, their shared emotional energy glowing stronger than ever. "Whatever you're planning, it has to work. The Void Hunters are moving faster than we've ever seen. Something about Earth's emotional energy is driving them into a feeding frenzy." James nodded grimly. "Then let's give them something to choke on." As night fell over the embassy, humans and aliens worked together with renewed purpose. They had just over a day to prepare for what James was calling the emotional wave. Humanity's last chance to teach an entire species how to feel before the darkness arrived to devour them all. The largest auditorium in the embassy was packed with every available member of the stellar collective on Earth. Nearly 300 aliens sat in perfect rows, their traditional emotional control still evident in their rigid postures. On stage, James stood before a massive screen, while Lyra worked with technicians to make final adjustments. "Are you sure about this?" Lyra asked, her voice low. Exposing them to such concentrated emotional content could overwhelm them. James checked the time display. 28 hours until the Void Hunters reach Earth. "We don't have a choice. Your people need to feel, and they need to feel now." He stepped to the podium, his heart racing. The compiled footage they were about to show represented humanity's most powerful emotional moments. Birth, death, love, loss, triumph, and sacrifice. They had spent hours selecting scenes that would hit hardest. "My friends," James began, "what you're about to see is humanity's gift to you. Don't fight what you feel. Let it in. Let it change you." The lights dimmed, and the screen came to life. It began with the simple sound of a baby's first cry, followed by the mother's tears of joy. The audience stirred uncomfortably. Then came scenes of children taking their first steps, falling down, getting back up, their determination and their parents' pride washing over the room. The footage continued. Elderly couples dancing after 50 years together, soldiers reuniting with their families, rescue workers pulling survivors from disaster areas, athletes achieving impossible goals, people helping strangers in times of crisis. Each scene was carefully chosen to showcase humanity's emotional depth. At first, the aliens remained stoic, but as the images and sounds washed over them, something began to change. A quiet sob broke the silence. Then another. Soon, the room filled with sounds no stellar collective gathering had heard in millennia. Crying, laughing, gasping. Lyra grabbed James's arm, pointing to the air above the audience. Streams of emotional energy, visible as shifting colors, began to rise from the assembled aliens. The energy patterns matched those created by their individual bonds, but on a massive scale. "It's working," she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion. "They're awakening." The finale of their presentation was a montage of Earth's greatest moments of unity, people from different countries, cultures, and beliefs coming together in times of need. As the last scene faded, the room erupted in something that had never happened before. Spontaneous applause from the stellar collective. James felt Lyra's hand slip into his as they watched the energy patterns above grow stronger, interweaving into a complex network. The aliens were not just feeling. They were connecting with each other, sharing their newfound emotions. One of the elder members of the collective stood up, tears streaming down his face. "All these centuries," he said, his voice shaking, "we thought we had evolved beyond emotion. Instead, we had crippled ourselves. Humans haven't just shown us how to feel. They've shown us how to be whole." Suddenly, Lyra's monitoring device began beeping urgently. The Void Hunters had accelerated again, drawn by the massive burst of emotional energy from the auditorium. They would reach Earth in less than 12 hours. But instead of fear, Lyra smiled. "Look," she said, pointing to her readings. "The emotional network, it's not just connecting our people, it's spreading. Humans all over the planet are starting to link into it unconsciously. The energy field is growing exponentially." James watched in awe as the display showed the network expanding, covering cities, countries, continents. Humanity's natural emotional connections were amplifying the effect far beyond their expectations. "How many bonds do we have now?" he asked. Lyra's eyes widened as she read the numbers. "Over 1,000, 2,000. It's still growing. The entire planet is becoming part of the network." The elder alien approached them, his silver-flecked eyes bright with newfound emotion. "The Void Hunters think they're coming to feed on Earth's emotional energy," he said. "Instead, they're about to encounter something unprecedented. Two species joined in perfect emotional harmony, each making the other stronger. James looked out over the auditorium, where humans and aliens now mingled freely, sharing their feelings without restraint. In 12 hours, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known would arrive. But Earth would be ready. The Void Hunters arrived as a massive dark cloud that blotted out the stars. From the embassy's observation deck, James and Lyra watched as the shadow descended toward Earth's atmosphere. But instead of fear, they felt ready. The emotional network now encompassed the entire planet. Billions of humans and thousands of stellar collective members were connected in a vast web of shared feelings. The energy field was visible from space, a shimmering, multicolored aurora that wrapped around Earth like a protective cocoon. "They're starting their attack," Lyra announced, monitoring the readings. The dark mass above split into countless tendrils, each reaching down toward the planet's surface. James closed his eyes, feeling the network's power flowing through him. "Remember, everyone, don't fight the emotions. Let them flow naturally. That's humanity's strength, feeling deeply while staying in control." The first tendril of darkness touched the energy field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like water hitting a hot pan, the darkness hissed and recoiled. The Void Hunters had never encountered resistance like this. "Look," Lyra pointed to her display. "The emotional energy isn't just blocking them, it's hurting them. Their mass is decreasing." The Void Hunters attacked again, this time with all their force. The impact shook the planet, but the shield held. More than that, wherever the darkness touched the emotional field, it began to dissolve. Inside the embassy, humans and aliens joined hands, strengthening their connections. Around the world, people instinctively reached out to each other, adding their emotional energy to the network. The shield grew brighter, stronger. "They're trying to adapt," Lyra warned, "changing their frequency to match our shield." James smiled. "That's exactly what we wanted them to do." As the Void Hunters tried to attune themselves to Earth's emotional frequency, something unexpected happened. The feelings they attempted to absorb were too complex, too balanced between logic and emotion. Like a computer given an impossible equation, they began to malfunction. The dark mass above Earth started to break apart. Where once there was a unified shadow, now there were scattered fragments, each trying desperately to escape the emotional energy that was tearing them apart. "We're not just defending Earth," Lyra realized, watching the readings. "We're showing the galaxy a new way to fight back." The last fragments of the Void Hunters flowed into deep space, leaving Earth's sky clear and bright. The emotional network pulsed with victory, joy, and relief, feelings shared by humans and aliens alike. In the days that followed, the changes became clear. The Stellar Collective, transformed by their awakened emotions, proposed a new galactic alliance with Earth at its center. Other species, hearing of the victory, began sending representatives to learn the human way of emotional balance. James stood with Lyra in his office, watching the sunset through the same window where they'd first met in the rain. "So what happens now?" he asked. Lyra smiled, her newfound emotions sitting comfortably alongside her logical mind. "Now we teach. The galaxy needs what humanity has always known, that feelings aren't weakness, that emotions and reason can work together, that connections between different species make everyone stronger." And the Void Hunters? Our long-range sensors show them retreating to the galaxy's edge. They'll think twice before attacking any world connected to the emotional network. And that network is growing every day. James nodded, feeling the constant warm hum of billions of connected beings. What had started as a desperate defense had become something more, a new way of living that bridged the gap between species. "You know," he said, "when you first held onto me crying, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Lyra laughed, a sound that would have been impossible for her species just days ago. Sometimes the biggest changes start with a single moment of genuine emotion. Outside, the sky darkened to reveal the stars. But they didn't seem distant anymore. Each point of light represented another world waiting to learn what Earth had discovered, that the greatest strength comes not from controlling emotions or being controlled by them, but from finding the beautiful balance between heart and mind. And in that balance lay the future of all species, connected not by fear or necessity, but by the simple, profound power of shared feelings.